you for tuning into the My Positive Perspective Internet Show today, where we feature individuals and groups who share the common goal of improving the local Charleston community. Today's episode is brought to you by Vistaprint, who reminds you that first impressions are always important. Today's guest is Sharon Murray. How you doing, Sharon?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Great, just great. And your title in the Charleston community is the Gullah Lady. I think that's really cool, especially considering how much the Gullah culture means to the Charleston community. So could you maybe talk about that real quick?
I think the Gullah culture is one of the important cultures in Charleston, in that a lot of the West African ways were adopted by the New World, and today they are basically mainstream ways, from looking at the foods, the music, the folk art, even when they came, the way we look at animal husbandry. So I think it had a really great influence on what we now call the Charleston way.
Sure, yeah. And a lot of the friendliness and the mannerisms and this sorts of things which are characteristic of the Charleston community really, came to from the Gullah culture.
Well, I'll tell you that the first thing when I met the Gullah people, the first thing that excited me was the language. I thought it was so amazing that people living on sea islands that were so close to this urban city, that they were able to create their own language and maintain it into the 21st century. I think that says a lot to their perseverance, and a lot that it was important that they keep some of their ancestor, though they had come to the New World.
You mentioned different types of food. Could you maybe talk a little more about the foods?
When Africans were brought to Carolina for the rice plantations, they brought with them their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about culture, culture not only means the language that you speak, the clothing that you wear, but it takes in every aspect, including the foods.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came, what they started to do is cooking the foods using the seasonings of Africa, which in time actually just evolved what much of the cuisine we have in Charleston that's native to Charleston. If you trace back the heritage of that seasoning or of that style of food, you'll find much of it came from Africa.
Sure. I mean, and it really helps take into account kind of the melting pot effect. This president and really not just the Carolina culture, but really the whole American culture.
I wholeheartedly agree. When I think about one of the foods that I was just fascinated with, and prior to moving here, I wouldn't touch the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okra soup. I think that is the most amazing dish. Growing up in Florence County, they cooked okra, but as a child, I saw the slime.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
slime.
If I ever saw the slime, I couldn't eat it.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that the texture of my food means a lot to me before I can put it in my mouth.
Uh-huh.
So I was just amazed by the okra soup. It was like a soup. And lo and behold, they put shrimp in it. That probably never would have occurred to any. That's right. And it turned into a soup. There was no slime. Now, I hadn't eaten rice in 6 or 7 years when I moved here, and was introduced to that okra soup. So the first summer I was here, I indulged myself with every Gullah type of cuisine possible, from the okra soup to what they call frogmore stew.
Oh yeah, frogmore stew. That's got the sausage and the shrimp
and the crabs, and it's like a one-pot meal. Potatoes and onions and celery and bell peppers. It just took me away.
Yeah, and then a lot of the Gullah culture has been like a thing of enlightenment. Almost.
Oh, I agree. It truly is. When I met the Gullah people more than 20 years ago, it was the first time, first of all, that I knew that they existed.
Mm-hmm.
The language that they spoke really attracted me. But when I met them and realized on Wadmalaw and Johns Island, the bridge to Wadmalaw wasn't built until the 1950s, which meant that they had no access except by boat and train to get to Charleston. That they came up with a philosophy that I have heard in Gullah communities from Georgetown to Beaufort. And I've heard people say that you learn how to make do, which meant, when you translate that, it meant that they figured out how to adapt and use the environment they were in to create those things that they needed to ensure their survival. And I just think that's an amazing thing when you think about Africans coming, and many of them spoke varying languages and couldn't understand each other. They were able to create a language and also to make their food ways, even the ways that they were able to worship. They were able always to adapt to where they were. And I think that's really an important factor if a culture is to survive.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, because I mean, the world is always changing. I mean, like it or not, it's always in a state of flux, and adapting with changes, adapting with flux is part of what makes a society successful.
I agree. I often think of this quote that Darwin wrote. He said, "It is not the strongest nor the most intelligent that survive. It is the one that has the greatest ability to adapt." And I think Gullah culture is a primary example of his phrase.
Sure.
They were able to fish and crab, hunt in the woods for squirrels and rabbits. They were able to grow their agricultural animals and also grow vegetables of all varying kinds to ensure their survival. And you know what's interesting? In doing some research, the way that we handle animal husbandry in America, particularly in the Gullah Geechee areas, was brought from Africa. In Africa, the animals were allowed to roam and forage for food. But when you look at European culture, they generally had them fenced in, partly because of the landmass that people were on. They needed to fence them in.
Right.
But in Africa, they could roam and forage, which meant you didn't have to feed the animals. They could figure out how to eat, fatten themselves up, and then you go and you bring them home for the family to eat.
Sure. Yeah. You know, very interesting stuff from you, Sharon. You know, the great episode we did, and we will hope that you'll stick around for some more episodes with us.
Well, you know, I'm so excited that I wouldn't leave. We need to do some more episodes.
Sure, we will. Thank y'all for tuning in to My Positive Perspective, and we'll see y'all next week. Have a great day.
On a sunny day, I feel my thoughts drift away. Only good vibes and good times living in my brain. On a sunny day, catch me lamping in the shade, feeling so fine and so high. Oh, my sunny day, still I hope all my efforts will one day pan out. The love within you'll never be without, so I roll, feeling strong and so invincible.